May the words of my mouth and the meditation of our hearts be always acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, my strength and my Redeemer. Amen. You are the salt of the earth. But if salt has lost its taste, how can its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything, but is thrown out and trampled underfoot. Our gospel reading for today is fine on its own, but in the wider scope of the scriptures, it comes right in the middle of the Sermon on the Mount. In fact, immediately before what we hear this Sunday in the scriptures are the Beatitudes, teachings that contain examples of what Christ wants his disciples to be. Those who are merciful, those who are pure of heart, peacemakers, those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. In this gospel, we look then at what Christ wants his disciples to do, which apparently is to be salt that's salty, light that shines, and be more righteous than the scribes and the Pharisees. The righteousness we'll get to later. But what does Christ mean by salt that's salty and light that's shiny? Well, for a little story. When I was back in Tallahassee, I was shopping at Target, which I consider sort of like Walmart's slightly higher quality and more expensive cousin. And I forgot what I was looking for specifically, but I remember I was walking around and someone walks up to me and says, "Hi, I'm looking for instant coffee." And my first thought is, well, that's nice of you to tell me, Guess my life's better now. But she keeps looking at me. And I realize, she wants an answer. So I tell her, I don't know where it is. I'm sure here. And she looks disappointed in me. Like I failed somehow. And she walks away. Okay, move on. Then a little later, someone stops me and they ask, "Hey, I'm looking for blank CDs." Again, I think, well, that's good for you, Glad you know what you want. But again, just standing there. He wants an answer. So I tell him I don't know. And he looks slightly angry at me. I'm sorry. He walks away. And so I'm starting to get confused at this point. And just before I head to check out, someone walks up to me and asks me where the restroom is. That I can answer. Big sign. Can't miss it. But the point is, as I pull into the checkout lane, I'm wondering, why am I getting so many questions? Do I just look inherently helpful? Do I look like I work here? And then I look at the cashier. And in fact, I do. I was wearing my normal long khaki pants with one of my favorite red polo shirts. Turns out, everyone that works at Target wearing khaki pants, red polo shirt. So people did think I worked there. And were upset when I didn't know what they expected me to. Because when they saw that clothing, they thought Target employee. and then thought, he knows how to help me. Because there is a hope, an association, that if you look like something, you'll actually do it. So when it turned out I didn't know, they got disappointed, angry. It was expected I would act how I looked. That Target employees will act like Target employees. That salt will actually be salty. That light will actually illuminate darkness. And for us, that Christians will actually act like Christians and not just look like them. It's important to note that salt and light are things that are a necessary part of life. They have helped to build civilization. They have an important purpose. Salt preserves and flavors. It is a necessary nutrient. Light allows us to see, to find our way, to work, to advance. And yet both are practically worthless if they don't do what they're supposed to, if they don't fulfill their purpose. Which brings us to righteousness, in which Christ uses the examples of the scribes and the Pharisees. That is, that many of them had the outward appearance of righteousness, following the law, keeping ritually clean, attending all the necessary sacrifices and services. Yet as we know, though they appeared pious and righteous, some used that appearance only for themselves, to have the place of honor at banquets, to be greeted with praise, all while devouring widows' houses and passing judgment on others. And so we're not really righteous at all. Salt without any saltiness, which I guess is just sort of like dirt. Jesus says this in relation to us in the message of the gospel. For we all have the appearance of Christians, given that we are all in a church on Sunday morning, and especially a good chunk of us the Sunday morning after the Crew of Cyprus tableau. Thank you. I feel like I can definitively say we all look like Christians. Yet Christ calls us not to just look like Christians, but to act like Christians. That those tenets of a disciple that came right before this reading, the Beatitudes, that they're not just for appearances, but they're how we live our lives. And most of all, that they are necessary. They have a purpose. Just like salt and light, that the message of the grace of God, that's showing mercy, being a peacemaker, hungering and thirsting for righteousness, that those things are sorely needed in this world, and that through our birth in Christ we are called to live them, to be an example, to fulfill our purpose. as children of God. I pray that we live into Christ's call to us as disciples, to be salt that is salty, light that shines, to not just look righteous, but strive to be righteous, to realize that we are part of a larger world that is hurting, and that is salt in light. We are needed. That in a world of greed and violence and vengeance and judgment, we can strive for righteousness. We can show mercy, forgiveness, kindness, and love. That we can be examples of humanity at its best. That we not just look like Christians, but act like them. We have the light of Christ. I pray that our light may so shine before others, that they may see our good works and give glory to our Father in heaven.